And we're back with another episode of Franchise My Business, the podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and we're recording this a day after Independence Day, which is super cool because my guest was just talking about some of his family heritage and some of the cool things going way, way back hundreds of years. But we're not going to talk about that. We're actually going to talk about the future. The future is unknown. The future looks bright. The future looks also scary sometimes if you start thinking about technology and you're not informed. And so I've got an expert on here who's going to talk a lot about tech. We're going to talk a lot about AI. We're going to talk a lot about what is happening in the world. So I have Mark de Grasse. He is the president of Digital Marketer. It's digitalmarketer.com. In my industry, agency industry, big, huge asset in terms of online learning, things like that. And they are an e-learning company that is super focused on like skill development in the digital marketing space. Now, what I like about Mark and why he's specifically on this show is we met at an industry conference called the Commitment Summit. And he gave a talk that he will say was the best talk that he ever gave. And I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree that it was a phenomenal talk. And so we're just going to dive right into this. Mark, welcome to the show, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. You know, it's amazing. We had just kind of met like a couple of weeks ago because I feel like, we chat like we've been together forever.
I know, it's hilarious, right?
Buddies.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. We're new buddies. And probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're kind of like futurists, both of us. Like I've always been a futurist. I've taken those demographic profiles and all that. Say, hey, you're a futurist. And I want to talk about, I want to condense what you kind of shared with us when we were in Costa Rica at the Commitment Summit down to kind of this point that we're at with tech right now. And then you had some pretty amazing analogies because your spouse is a hotshot firefighter or was a hotshot firefighter back in the day. Sure, yeah. And so that's a pretty cool analogy that you use. And so let's just talk about a little bit about your history first and foremost, so people know who you are, where you're coming from, and then we'll dive into some of the more nerdy stuff.
Sure. So history is pretty, I think it's pretty versatile. And that's kind of what gives me the perspective that I have on AI development and specifically small business development. So I've been doing content marketing for 20, 25 years. During that period, I've had an agency. I had a e-commerce business that was built off of a content platform, a magazine called My Mad Methods. Sold that to a company called On It here in Austin, which is why I'm here in Austin. And then was a content developer for them. Now, in between all of my little small businesses, I actually took an executive position once every 5 years for the last 25 years. And I didn't do this on purpose. It was kind of just like, that's just what happened. But it's given me a lot of perspective on kind of business development and everything else. I'm also an HR major, which is kind of unique with the focus on business development, which allowed me to essentially write plans. And so I kind of picture, I consider myself a business development expert on top of just doing content for so long because I've been obsessed with it since I was like 7, making content. And that's pretty much it. So now I teach marketing at digitalmarketer.com. And we try to get people ready for the future, not through any specific technique per se, but through a kind of overarching strategy, which you could then plug in the different elements of marketing into, which makes it super versatile. Even though everything's about to change, our methods will still be, useful, which is why I'm here.
Yeah, no, I mean, for imagine probably a lot of franchisors aren't familiar with digitalmarketer.com. So go check it out. I mean, you'll see that in the digital agency space, digital marketing space, they have been this beacon of light, of trust, putting together industry conferences, accreditations, like just all sorts of awesome things for our industry. And people are looking at getting into our industry. It's often one of the first places that they land. So it's a very high authority place. And, you've been an entrepreneur and then you took a job. How's that going?
Every 5 years I've taken a job. What's funny is because I, as an entrepreneur, it's always kind of like, oh, you went and got a job. Like, I can't believe you did this. It's like, no, jobs, if you really look at them as you get paid to train and try concepts.
Yeah.
jobs are great.
Yes, they are.
It's still very useful, and you can still employ all your skills, helps you build knowledge where you didn't have it before, and you don't have to go spend money to get that knowledge. You actually get paid for it. So if you could swing it like I have, I think it's ideal. With this position, I was really looking at digital marketer. I was trying to teach marketing, so it made a ton of sense because instead of trying to train small business owners, which is what I was trying to do with my agency, I get trained marketers who actually want to learn about marketing, which is unique.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny is the situation is kind of similar to a franchise in the sense that what we did at Digital Marketer was take, 120,000 marketers and agencies that we've worked with and kind of distilled everything that we've learned from our community into a framework that you could now use yourself in any industry to execute marketing. So like a franchisee gets the plan, get the procedures. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make all the mistakes that all other marketers or business owners have made. Here you go. Here's a system. You could tweak it. You can make it your own. But at the end of the day, you could start somewhere. And so, that's kind of why I like digital marketer. And jobs are great. It's
I kind of wish I had one right now. I mean, honestly, this has been a year of change, right? Definitely a lot.
No. But you don't want a job right now.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
You're right, because those jobs are all going to go away, right? So if you're thinking about getting a job, that job's going to change. Let's just jump to let's just get into the nitty gritty, like where we are right now, because some really cool and interesting and transformative things have happened to the public. Guys like you and I have been using AI behind the scenes for many years. Like, to me, it's nothing new. Nothing new.
No, you know what? It's funny because it isn't new. There's actually a company called Synthesia that I had worked with 2 years ago. They're one of those avatar companies that allow you to type in words and the avatar says the words. Yeah. So that wasn't new to me either. What convinced me of AI was back in December when I tried ChatGPT, and then I tried an app called Lensa, which was a graphic app. It just makes an avatar version of you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time this has been impressive. Because I've tried it before and I was like, yeah, that's something. But this was super impressive. And then once I started getting into ChatGPT and, as a content creator, I do a ton of research. And so just that one component, like, oh my gosh, I could come up with a process and I could find all the justification for that process all the time. There's also a website called elicit.org that only references research papers. And so when you're talking about justifying your concepts or doing research for any kind of content, then it's just research papers. So you can justify almost any argument you have and do the research in minutes.
Right.
It's almost like doing a fair. So once I saw that, I was like, this is a game changer. And then the biggest game changer, and this is why I tell people, because when you think about AI, most people think of generative AI. They think of, okay, you could type in and I could write an article in a minute just by typing a few words, or I could use Synthesia and I could have avatar say my piece and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is fine. But what's actually transformative about AI is the fact that it makes programming, computer coding, cheap. And that's the one fact. It has nothing to do with generative other than you're generating code.
You're generating code,
But that code, if you tried to do it yourself or if you tried to hire somebody to do it, it would be very difficult if you've never coded before. It's not like, something you just pick up.
It's not like a WYSIWYG website builder where you might be able to figure it out. You're just going to be not good at coding. If you don't know how to code, you can't.
You can't. Well, you got to learn language.
Yeah,
you have
just
to understand the parameters of the language.
Yep.
The rules, the syntax, all that stuff comes into effect, and it's really difficult, which is why we've ended up with the situation that has basically been the bottleneck for all development, which has been programming, because you have to go to a programmer. And not only that, but that programmer writes custom code or malicious code or whatever they want to keep their jobs. And this situation, and you can't even blame programmers for it, because if anybody was in any situation that could make your life or your income higher, you would probably be okay with it. And that's what programmers have done. They've been so in demand that they have been able to raise their rates forever, keep their jobs forever, develop anything they want forever, because having them make changes has been so difficult. But now with AI specifically, is you could just do all the code through AI. It's a language processor. So it knows exactly how to translate what you want into code. And I'm not saying that everybody's going to become a coder, but what it's going to do is make developing apps, developing custom solutions for your website or any product, any SaaS product is just going to be dirt cheap.
Yeah, our cost is going to go way down, way down.
Yep. And people are kind of like, oh, whatever. But if you remember, between 2008 and 2012, we had the app explosion. Remember when everybody had an idea for an app?
They did.
It was like,
absolutely.
Oh, I have an idea. I'm going to be a millionaire. It's like, no, you're not going to be a millionaire because you need $1 million to develop that app. And then on top of that, it's probably going to be crap. And then you're going to have to do that again. And most people don't have that ability to go through it. So what you end up with is a bunch of apps like Facebook, where the interface is trash. You don't like the company. You don't like the owner. You don't like how they, manipulate your data or steal your information. But we all have to use it because it's the only thing that kind of works.
Right.
Now, just imagine if it was the exact opposite, where you didn't actually use apps unless they were really good, really useful, really intuitive, where you just pull it up and it does the thing that you downloaded the app for. Now, this sounds crazy, but like this was the origin of original development, where it was like, no, I need a solution, plug, done. But the disconnect has actually happened between the programmers and between the users. And now the users are basically being trained to be programmers, where it's like, if you really want to get into an app, you have to do tons of legwork. You got to figure it out. You got to look up things. And it's like, that's a terrible solution. A solution should be, hey, I need this thing calculated, download an app, and then it calculates it and I win. Right. So what's going to happen now is that you're going to have everything flipped to the other side. Well, two aspects. The program is going to be huge because it allows us to develop whatever we want cheaply. Right. And that's enormous. But what that does for automation, which is why, there's so many jobs right now, because automating any task, even a task as simple as inputting expenses, that whole process is still a pain. You still need an accounting department. You still need an administrator to enforce the managers to turn in the receipts on time. Not that I don't do that right away. But I do get in trouble sometimes.
Yes.
For not turning in my receipts. But just imagine, it's like, no, my emails are there. All my expenses are there. Why do I have to go through the process of finding the information, screenshotting it, uploading it, justifying the expense? Like, it's just a ton of work. And that's just a standard management job. Now just imagine that there's an app for that. Like, oh yeah, we pulled all your expenses out of the email that we have access to, found the expenses. You shouldn't be saying what they are other than telling me a short summary of what the money was spent on. Yeah. And then it's categorized automatically because there's only so many expenses and they're all pretty much the same. Why haven't we automated this? Right. And the answer goes back to, it's expensive. It's expensive to write the code, expensive to implement the code, expensive to train people on how to use the code. Now just get rid of all of that. Things just do what you want them to do in the first place. Yep. I mean, and what this will do is, well, one, it will lead to job loss, not because of generative AI, but because you could now automate processes using software, which is what we all wanted to do in the first place. Then the second side is just the need for good service. Good products and good service. Now that sounds like, oh, everybody needs a good product, good service. No, we don't have good products and services. What we have is soda that could technically be used as a cleaner because it's crap. We have chains of burger shops that essentially sell plastic. We have crap services. We have insurance companies that spend billions of dollars on advertising their crappy customer service, that when you have an accident, you are now going to be not, they're going to take care of me and they're sending me a check in a car and taking care of me. No, you're going to have to fight.
You got to justify it. Yeah, you do. It's like,
for this service. And so all companies have been able to get away with just crap service, crap products. I'm writing a book about this, by the way.
That was the first blog post I did of this year. Or maybe it was the first video, but I said the best marketing technique of 2023, and then Prinz, I said, and always, right? And it's service. It's just provide good service. Like that's all you need to do. If you're a restaurant, just provide good service.
Oh, but it's impossible right now because you're spending all this money on employees that don't want the job, that are upset that they're working for the job, don't think they're getting paid enough, don't think they're being treated nice enough. All these different factors, which are not invalid factors. Right. At the end of the day, like, we don't have enough workers to do actual work. What we have is an entire workforce of people who don't want to work, don't want the jobs that are available, and are upset about it.
Right.
It's like, what if, well, and that's why it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, because I'm like, hey, there's going to be a ton of job loss. Conservative estimates are between 80 and 300 million jobs being lost by 2030, which I think is ridiculous. I think it's way higher than that. Yeah. And the reason is because of that programming issue of like, we can automate things, and all these office jobs, these cushy admin jobs are going to be gone. They're just not going to exist anymore, because they're going to be not only unnecessary. If you had a person do some of these tasks, which we all do, it just goes crummy. Yep. So that's that side. Now the actual side, and this is a side that will affect franchisees and all small business owners, is the fact that your service and your product are going to have to be good, not just like lip service. Oh, it's in our mission statement and it's in our core principles, says we have good service. No, jerk. You need to people need to be raving about your service. They need to be like, yeah, I went in there and there was a line of like 5 people, but they somehow got through the line in like less than 5 minutes. They greeted me. They remembered my name. I'd only been there once, but they remembered my name. They knew what I was going to order. They just handed it to me. I was like, what is this? This trip to the store usually takes me 30 minutes. I just got in and out of there in 5 minutes. This was incredible. So this type of experience is going to be 100% necessary, specifically because AI is going to automate paid advertising. And so when you have paid advertising, right now you got to hire a marketer. You got to learn the system. You got to lose a bunch of money for a little bit. You got to do all these things. And what ends up happening is that only a small percentage of businesses actually end up going through with online paid advertising. Right. Now, imagine the future where Google has just effed the whole system and has changed how analytics works.
Yes, they did. July 1st.
July 1st. GA4. So, yeah. So just imagine this, though. Imagine that they now use generative AI and now they have a handle on how to do good automated paid advertising. Now they send out a gift certificate to every mechanic. Let's use mechanics. They send out a gift certificate to every mechanic for $250 in free advertising on the new Google Ads, whatever platform. Now they plug in. Joe, the mechanic, plugs in his information. Okay, my address. Here's my services. And that's it. That's all he does. Yep. He's done. Now, AI does the rest of the work. They generate the ads. They do the A/B testing. They look at all the analytics. They figure it all out just automatically. And now that $250 just led to $750. Yeah. What do you think the mechanic is going to do next? He's going to plow as much money into that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other guy, Billy down the street with his mechanic shop, is going to be like, holy crap, Joe, like, what'd you do? He's like, oh, I just used this gift certificate and I'm blowing up. I have so much business. I can't even handle it. I'm going to tell you what I did because I'm so busy that I need your help.
Yep.
And yeah. So now Billy's like, holy crap, that worked for you. Now Billy puts in his $250. Now Billy makes $750. And what happens is going to be a trickle effect of all these small business owners that never even would have considered paid advertising online are now going to be like, it's impossible. I can't not do this. Like, I have to do this because all my competitors are stealing all my business because it's so effective. So now instead of just having 1 out of 10 mechanics on Google Ads, you have 8 out of 10 mechanics on Google Ads. Let's not even go there. Let's say 5 out of 10. Half of mechanics are now using Google Ads. What do you think that does to the ad cost, especially in a local area?
Skyrocket.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's just one industry and one situation. But all this stuff is going to get automated. So what's going to happen is that the ad cost, the cost of acquiring a new customer is going to go through the roof. So what is going to have to happen is that the lifetime value of every customer is going to have to be way higher, because you're going to probably be losing money on those first maybe 2-3 transactions you have with somebody. There's just going to be like a wash. And that's going to be okay with you, because if you could keep that customer, it's going to be really hard for somebody to steal that customer. Right. So what this is going to lead to is way better services, way better customer care, way better everything. And if you aren't that good, you're just going to go out of business, because nobody's going to have to tolerate it. Because on the other side, and this is a whole other facet of AI, is I believe that we'll all end up having personal AIs that will feed us the information that we want without us asking for it. So what you're doing is you're going to have to convince people's AI to keep using your service or your product. Right. And you're going to take such good care of these people. You're going to be like, oh my God, thank you for coming to me for this service. Like, I will do anything to keep you on the team.
Right.
And so that's going to happen everywhere. And what's going to happen is every consumer is going to have these expectations. Like, the service needs to be excellent. The customer care needs to be perfect. The product needs to just last forever and be good the whole time. And actually maybe even change with the times. Like, who knows? But that's going to be the expectation that we're all going to have for products and services. So if you don't have your stuff dialed in, which goes back to the franchise talk, these people, your franchisors have done all the work for you. You get a system in place. You get a product that works. You get advertising systems that are already set up. You get maybe national support for your advertising. All this stuff is going to be way more valuable. Like, and it's going to be almost impossible to come up with your own system for a new business unless you've done it before. Right. Which at that point, you should probably just be a franchisor.
So there you go. So there you go. So if you're a prospective franchisee, and you've heard me say this before, service is king. Service is king, period. Full stop. I don't care. I don't care what type of business you're in. We are in a culture that lacks service, that lacks care. And that stuff is going to start to rise up. In my opinion, it's already up. People's senses are heightened because they kind of are expecting a higher level of service. As we say in our family, we've buried the bar. I mean, it's embarrassing. Like, it's so low. Our service bar now, and it used to be high.
Oh, it's like,
but it's like in the toilet.
I talk to a human.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody actually helped me.
Oh my gosh, this isn't an automation.
They were excited to help me. Like, wow, mind blown. So that stuff's going to matter no matter what. If you have a personal AI walking around with you, we get to a point where we actually have like little. I can imagine. Yeah, I was a Jetsons fan. I imagine our personal AI is actually going to have like a little cute, like a little. It's going to be like a little person type of thing that follows us. Like, we're going to
maybe on your shoulder. It's like a parrot that flies around.
Something. We're going to have something, right? You can't just have this creep because Google Glasses crashed and failed. Like, we can't have it completely ingrained in our.
People weren't ready for it. They were way too soon.
They were.
And it's like, no. What's happening now, like the Google Vision, when people make fun of Apple Vision Pro, like, they're like, oh, it's so expensive. I'm like,
that's V1.
It's the price of a laptop.
Yeah, it's V1
It's not that expensive.
Right.
And the stuff that it could do, I'm like, it has 16 cameras. It's tracking your eye movements with 3 cameras a piece, has LiDAR, has the whole front is an LCD display. I mean, it's nuts. It's made out of metal. Like, it's crazy.
You go back and look at the first iPhone, that's version 1, right? And we'll get there, and you'll have something that'll be a little bit more skimmed down and more attractive in pricing for Joe Public as well. In short order, I think. Like, I really do.
The thing is, that's a whole nother evolution of marketing that's going to have to happen, because as a marketer, I look at the Apple Vision Pro or just VR in general, and I'm like, wait a second. You're telling me that my consumer that I want to advertise to is going to fully encapsulate their face into my media.
Right.
There is no downside to this. I am going to control what they see, what they like interact with, what they hear. Like, this is a marketer's paradise is VR. That's why I'm always like, when people are like, oh, VR is ever going to be a thing. I'm like, no, it has to be a thing. I need this. Yeah. Track your eye movements. I could probably tell how you're feeling using AI components when you're in my VR environment. We're probably going to sign off on that. And it's just like, it just blew me away.
Yeah, it's just in the terms and conditions. Oh, here's your sentiment. Yeah, you're grumpy right now. I can tell.
Oh, well, just imagine, just give you a use study of how you could use the kind of user data combined with generative AI would be, hey, I know that you track a certain type of person online, like based on the eye tracking algorithm, like this type of person always catches your eye. So when you walk into my virtual shop, I know that if I have a rep that looks exactly like that person that you always seem to be looking at, there's a good chance that you'll interact with my AI person really well. And I could probably track the colors you like. I could track your personal preferences in terms of hobbies or interests. I mean, I could tweak everything to make the perfect environment to convince you to buy whatever I want you to buy. So that's like the power of AI, AI and and user information. And everybody's going to love this. Like, it's going to be insane how addictive it is. Yep. And there's just, unless you're like prepared for that level of what's going on, because most people just don't understand it. What they'll see is they'll be like, yeah, they have all the information I've ever wanted. Everything's attractive. I don't know why. I just feel good when I'm like interacting with their thing. Like, yeah, it's almost not even fair. Right. And that's what you got to be ready for.
So I think that, and I'm an optimist as well, like big time. Like I always see these things and see, us here at the beginning of the internet, seeing what we've been able to do with it. Sure, there's some unintended consequences a couple of decades later. Absolutely. Right. Social media is probably one of the bigger ones that we didn't really see coming and know how to manage it. Do you think we nail it or we mess up? If you and I are talking, let's say 2 decades from today, right? 2 decades. I know it's hard. It's hard. Do you think humanity does it the right way? Or do you think
I think it's going to be like everything else, 50-50. Yeah. There's going to be some really great things that happen. There's going to be some really bad things that happen. Yeah. Either way, the genie's out of the bottle.
It's way out. It's way out. Like trains left the station.
You could fight. Well, I talked about that during that speech that I gave. I actually talked about the 3 groups of people that I think there'll be. There'll be creators, there'll be users, and then there'll be preservationists is what I'm calling them. Basically, people who are going to abstain from all technology and go back to like grassroots agrarian living, which is fantastic. I think that's great. So I think that's how people are going to move. But the dangerous side of AI and VR and all these different things is that imagine your online avatar, and this isn't something new. I don't know if you remember Second Life, but Second Life.
I remember Second Life. Yeah, there was so many promises, but it didn't deliver. Right?
So many promises, but the interface was lame.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was. Well, but it was all like, just like vector.
Yeah, it's terrible. The graphics were terrible. You really knew what to do once you got there, but still.
No, you could buy stuff. You could buy real estate. But that concept back then, I think that was the mid 2000s.
It was,
and it was way ahead of its time.
It was.
But just imagine that same environment, which people got addicted to that too. Mm-hmm. Just imagine now you could go into VR. You could become anything you want. Oh man, I've always wanted to be a bird, so I'm going to have wings. I'm going to have a crazy mohawk because I've always wanted to do that, but I'm not brave enough in real life. Yeah. And I like, horse legs. Like, I just think horses are fast, so horse legs too. And now just imagine you're interacting with people, and it's not some, cheap, crappy image that you're looking at. It's actually, it looks like you, except in the form of whatever you want to take. Now, if you take that combined with some less desirable, sinful online activities, now you can see how people would start to defer to VR environments rather than the real world. Right. Or they start taking those behaviors that they have online and they start transferring those into the real world. Now you have something unforeseen, because I don't know what that would do with a dangerous person that's exercising dangerous activities 24/7. Like, what is that person going to be like? So that's the scarier side of it. So, and there's no preventing that. But people already do that. The problem, or the difference between what's happening now, what's happening, say, next year, is that it's going to be way better. Everything's going to be better, because the other big side of what's going to happen is just the bandwidth issue. Because the reason why VR hasn't been good to date, why Meta kind of sucks, is because bandwidth and processing power, those two things are a big barrier. Because when you put on that headset, you still got to download the crap. If it's, streaming, now you got streaming 360 environment. That's a very difficult. And that's why Meta kind of seems like backwards, because the graphics aren't good. It's because of this factor. Now, what's happening with AI is you'll have generative AI on your device. So instead of having the host provide all the data to you every second, now your generative system, which takes way less speed and way less processing power, because it's generative and based on mathematics and formulas and things that most people aren't going to understand, then now your device is taking that workload on. So now you need less bandwidth. Now, the other side is that processing power is going to increase, and even energy consumption is going to decrease because you're going to be able to recode all these crummy programs using clean code through AI that now can transfer to anybody. So now you sped up the internet, you sped up processing, you've localized the actual generation of the images that you're looking at. Now everything's smooth and everything's fast and everything's, you can make the actual environment feel way more realistic. And so it's different. That's why I keep on saying, I'm like, this is even bigger than just the internet coming around.
Oh,
it's like, that was gradual.
Yeah,
it was like,
the on-ramp was real
years, decades.
Yeah. And this one's just been like, well, I mean, think about it. We're hyper connected now because of the internet. And so therefore all these ideas and everything moves so quick. But yeah, you're right. As I think back to like my adoption of the internet, my first job at a .com, in the 90s and everything, and just this gradual thing, we're just gonna go. We're going exponentially faster than before. So.
Well, and my typical example that I always say is from Julia McCoy, who is the president of Content Scale. Yep. Yeah. So originally the way she got that job was actually that we had her speak on stage for us in December 2022. And she gave this speech about how AI, article or content generation was never going to surpass humans. She came up there. She's like, this reason, the emotional connection, the experience, the humanity, you can't replace this. So the guys at Content Scale heard the speech and they contacted her and said, hey, could you please just try our system? They do long form article generation. Could you please just try it? And she tried it and then immediately fired 100 people.
Yeah.
And because she didn't need writers anymore.
Yeah.
And so then she just kept on getting into it. And then she gave a speech for us in, I think, March. And then she became president of that company.
Right.
And she was a 6-time author who has had a article generation business for 5-6 years. Yeah. And she flipped. And actually, that was a big part of my conversion too, because I'm like, holy crap, if she can flip and she's saying that this is good and she's a writer and she's, somebody who's super capable, like that would be the main barrier would be her. Right. And she just flipped. So that was like,
when she flipped, we were listening too, right? I mean, yeah, we saw the whole thing go with Julia and I was like, man, yeah.
That's a big deal.
It really kind of was. I mean, it really was. It was, when you get somebody who,
6 times, somebody who makes their money off of content.
I mean, her old writing service we used to use, EW, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We started using them back in 2015, 16, 17, when we first started our company. So yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Well, this has been awesome. I think we're going to have you back on, to talk more. I'm pretty sure like all the franchisor, if anybody was thinking about franchising now, they're just like, you know what? We're just going to sit on the sideline and wait for a minute.
No. Well, that's what I want to encourage. They shouldn't. You need to get on now. Yes. Because that ad increase, the ad costs going through the roof, that's just going to happen. So if you don't start the business now, if you don't get established with a community, if you don't privatize your following through email marketing and private communities through Discord and Slack and whatever you want, then you're going to end up on the buying advertising program. And that's going to be super expensive. Yep. So get started today. Just be ready for, a little bit bumpy ride. It's going to be a bumpy ride for a little bit.
Bumpy, but full of curiosity and definitely not a dull moment. And I think that's what, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we just don't want to be bored. Like if we're creating something, this is a pretty interesting time that if you were bored in whatever it is that you're creating, there's new ways to create it. There's different ways to create it. It can be cheaper. There can be new things that you can create. So it is a super exciting time. And I'm excited for it. I really am. So if people
everybody should be. This is the frontier. Yeah. And actually I thought about this 10 years ago when I was like, man, things are boring. Like, what the heck? Things have not changed. They haven't developed. There's been no progression. What the heck is happening? And what I came to was, we don't have a frontier anymore. Like, there's just nowhere to go.
Right.
And so now that's what AI has done, has opened a frontier. And now we could be excited and interested again.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great. Everybody's going to love it.
It is.
Well, we're going to have a blast. Everybody else is going to be freaking out.
All the nerds would be like, hey, this is what we've been asking for. And they're like, oh no, this is really what you guys wanted.
I'm like, yeah, things are dumb right now.
I know. If people want to sync up with you, learn more about you, like what's the best place for them to do so online?
Just my website, markdegrasse.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I try to post a few times a week at least. And then I am coming out with my book, hopefully in the next couple months before things start going really crazy. Actually, I did the working title right now is just wildfire. And it basically is saying why AI is similar to a wildfire in both destructiveness and renewal.
Yes.
So
regeneration.
Yin and yang. You got to have both. It's going to be hard. But at the end of the day, everybody's gonna be really happy with what comes after this because everything's boring and stupid right now.
Yeah, you're right. We're in a weird space. Let's mix it up. Yeah. Mix it up. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate your time and for joining us on the show. I know everybody really will get a lot of nuggets out of this conversation, as I did.
Yes. Well, I do this kind of crap all the time. So I'm like, I came up with ideas while we were talking. I was like, oh, yeah.
You gotta write this down. Write this down.
I got it. I'll just listen to that episode.
Oh, my gosh. That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Well, until next time, I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and I just have two asks. Number one, if you like what we're doing at Franchise My Business, deeply appreciate if you would leave us a review. We don't have a ton. It's the feedback loop. I read every single one of those and deeply appreciate them. And then number two, just deeply appreciate if you would subscribe to our show. Until next time, I hope that you have a phenomenal week and be well.